Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So I'm going to wait a couple of minutes for people to join. I just want to do this quick hangout while I'm at the airport. Yeah, so just bear with me a second. I just want to wait till a couple of people get on before I get started. This should be a short hangout, depending on the feedback that I get on this live stream. Hopefully, I'm coming through loudly and clearly. I see a couple of people on right now. If you can let me know in the chat room if you hear me okay, throw up a one. Let me know if it's buffering. If everything's fine, just throw up that one in the chat room so I can know that where it go, that everything's good, because I don't want to waste time. Cool. Shout out to Mocha Culture. Thanks for letting me know that everything is good. So I'm gonna get started in a minute. Just want to wait a few minutes before we get going. Okay. So let me get right into it. So actor Bette Midler made a controversial statement on Twitter that had a lot of people responding to her. A lot of people were outraged by her comment. And this is what she said. She said, "Women are the N word of the world. Raped, beaten, enslaved, married off, worked like dumb animals, denied education and inheritance, enduring the pain and danger of childbirth, and live in silence for thousands of years. They are the most disrespected creatures on the earth." That's what she said. What's up, Big Game Orenthal? Thanks for tuning in. So I just want to dissect that statement for a second. But before I do, what do you all think about that? Do you think that women are the N word of the world? What is your reaction to that statement? For those of you who don't know, Bette Midler is a famous actress. Like, she's best known for being in like Hocus Pocus, and she's a famous singer as well. So I want to know what y'all think about this. And her tweet was basically put out in response to all this controversy involving Judge Brett Kavanaugh. As you all know, he's been nominated for the Supreme Court. They had a hearing where Christine Ford basically testified that this man tried to rape her over 30 years ago. And this has created a lot of controversy, and his whole appointment was in jeopardy. But now they've decided to move forward with his nomination. It looks like he's probably going to be on the Supreme Court. So, in response to that, she was angry. And as you all know, there were protests that took place. A lot of people were outraged and everything, and they were demonstrating. And she said that she put out that tweet in response to that whole controversy. So again, for the people that are just tuning in right now, Bette Midler basically said women are the N word of the world. And she was highly scrutinized for making that statement. So I'm just going to get into my thoughts about this. And before I do, I just want to also acknowledge that she did issue an apology after a lot of people responded to her. She said, that she's an ally and she stands with black women, and she's always done that, and she apologizes. And basically, she was apologizing because her statement really failed to take into account the plight of black women who face the problems of race and gender. So she issued that apology. So I had to get that out the way before I get into this discussion. And that brings me to the first point that I have to raise, and that is the plight of the black woman. Basically, this woman is talking about the plight of women in general, and she's also talking about the plight of white women in particular. Black women suffer from a double oppression in this society, both as women and as African Americans. So for her to basically say that, white women are the most disrespected, or women, period, are the most disrespected, that fails to take into account the plight of black women in particular. It fails to take into account the plight of other oppressed groups around the world. And when you look at the plight of the white woman, her plight is not comparable to the plight of black people. That's obvious. All you have to do is look at slavery. African Americans, black people were oppressed in this country for hundreds of years, enslaved for hundreds of years, denied all kinds of human and civil rights, not even viewed as human beings, sold just like you sell property, like you sell cattle and stuff like that, denied basic human rights, not even recognized as human beings, beaten, raped, killed. During the Middle Passage, hundreds of thousands of African Americans, African people enslaved, died. So you can't compare that situation, the plight of African Americans to the plight of just women in general. Now, without a doubt, women have suffered oppression, around the world. That's undeniable. There is a problem of sexism around the world. But to compare that plight to the plight of African Americans in particular, it's just out of line. She talked about how women were the N-word of the world. No, black people were the N-word of the world. And that terminology was designed to oppress black people in particular. That word was reserved to humiliate and degrade and, just right, dehumanize black people. So for her to like take on the plight of our people and try to say that her situation as a white woman or just as a woman is worse than the plight of black people, it's preposterous, man. I mean, last time I checked, these white women were not enslaved in this country for hundreds of years. They weren't sold. They didn't have their families ripped apart. Where one child was sold to one plantation owner, another child sold to another slave master, just ripped apart. They didn't have to go through that. They didn't have to go through seeing their men castrated, seeing their women raped in front of them. They didn't go through that. Having their children used as alligator bait, and hundreds of years of slavery, and then after that, you know, decades of Jim Crow oppression where you are segregated, denied basic human rights, the basic right to eat where you want, to go to any hotel you want to go to, the basic right to vote, the basic right to an education. They weren't denied those same rights to the same extent as black people. So, I mean, to call yourself the N-word of the world is just absolutely asinine and ridiculous. And when you look at, just what we've gone through as a people, man, the continuing oppression that we see today, where black people too often are killed by police officers and there is no justice in sight. You have rare situations where there is justice, like that case of Laquan McDonald that I talked about not too long ago. Yesterday I did a video about justice in that case, and you had a case of justice in Edward Jordan's situation, a young brother killed. But those are rare cases where you have justice. So you have those examples of oppression, and they're trying to compare that to, the plight of women. Of course, women go through some oppression, but it's not comparable at all. It's not comparable to the plight of the native people in this country, for instance. A people who were subjected to genocide, deliberately infected with smallpox and stuff like that. Shot and gunned down mass executions of native people, stripped of their land and stripped of everything. You know, the plight of women in general and white women in particular cannot compare to the plight of all these people who suffered under white supremacy. And we have to talk about that. While there is sexism against white women and stuff, and they do suffer to some degree, the fact of the matter is they often benefit from white supremacy. They often benefit from racism and colonialism. They reap the benefits of that. They reap the financial benefits of the free labor that our ancestors were forced to do when they were enslaved in this country. All the wealth that all these companies reaped off of our free labor, whether we're talking about insurance companies, whether we're talking about the federal government, whether we're talking about, banks and educational institutions, just about every institution and every business uh, type of business in this country has benefited in some kind of way from slavery, and these white women indirectly benefit from that, whether they opposed it or not. Whether they did suffer discrimination as women or not, they still reap the financial benefits of our enslavement. They still reap the financial benefits of imperialism and colonialism, the colonization of Africa. These people reaped all the wealth as a result of that. So for them to compare, to pretend like they are like down with us and allies with us when it's their husbands, their brothers that are the ones that are oppressing humanity, man. You know, they can't compare their situation to ours, especially when they benefit from this system. And the fact that this woman would diminish the plight of black women just, once again proves that these people aren't really true allies to the black woman. They have this rhetoric about like women's solidarity and all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, they put themselves first and you second. And that's just something that people have to realize. And the fact that she wouldn't even think about that until after the fact just tells you like how detached these people are, like how much they lack empathy and sympathy for the plight of their so-called allies, man. But yeah, so I just had to express this, man. I'm glad that she apologized, but still, the statement shouldn't have even been issued in the first place. Even if you look at that situation involving Christine Ford, just bear with me a second. I'm gonna wait till this announcement is over. Yeah, so even if you look at that situation involving Christine Ford, which is horrible, I believe her. I do believe that she told the truth. I don't think that somebody would come out, out to make these kind of statements all these years later if it wasn't true. And then she told other people about this well before people even knew who Kavanaugh was. So I believe her. But to compare that her situation to the plight of black women, I mean, or our people, period, it's just ridiculous because our people were raped for centuries, man. Raped for centuries, bred like animals, just like you breed dogs and stuff like that. That's how they would breed black people. Just like you breed cows and, other type of livestock on a farm. That's what they would do to black people. So while I sympathize with her situation and while, obviously I think that Kavanaugh is not worthy to serve on the Supreme Court and all that kind of stuff, and I share their outrage against this man, the fact of the matter is, it's not, her plight is not comparable to the plight of black women in particular and the plight of black people in general. And then another thing is this, man, often, you know, despite all this feminist rhetoric that you hear from a lot of these white women, often, unfortunately, um, a lot of these white women are the ones that support a Kavanaugh. A lot of these white women are the ones that support a Donald Trump, even though Donald Trump has shown his utter disrespect for women, period, and white women in particular. I mean, this man has bragged about groping women. This man has bragged about, abusing women. This man has been accused of sexual misconduct by multiple women. But yet and still, these same women voted for him. You know, they held this march, this women's march shortly after he was elected, but he wouldn't have been elected if so many white women did not support him. And the same is true like with this Kavanaugh situation. You have white women supporting him. So, I mean, again, that's another reminder that these people reap the benefits of this stuff, and also they support this stuff. So they are not in the same boat as African Americans, and they are not treated like African Americans. Of course, you have oppression of women, as I've pointed out. You do have derogatory terms that are used towards women. like the B word, the H word, and all kinds of disrespectful terms used towards women. And those are oppressive terms, but no word is more oppressive than the N word. No word strips people down and dehumanizes people more than the N word. That is probably the most offensive word in the English language, and that's for a reason. So for her to compare the plight of women to black people is to diminish the struggle and the suffering of our people. And I'm glad people called her out and aired her out on this. So what I'm going to do is go through your comments before I close out. I just wanted to share my thoughts about this briefly. It's just crazy, man. So in response to my question about whether or not women are the N-word of the world, Big Game said, hell no, especially not white women. And Walter Sniper said, I don't take that as a compliment, especially coming from white females. So Big Game said, I have to disagree with double oppression. Black women aren't mistreated the same way the black males are. Now, I have to respond to that. I know a lot of people may say that because they see, for instance, that black women are one of the most educated groups in the country, and black women are achieving certain things in society and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is, black women are you know oppressed just like other like black people in period are oppressed. Black people period suffer from racism in this society, and not only that, black women suffer from oppression, whether it's in the household as well. Like you have, situations where many black women are sexually abused as well. Sexually abused. Like I was reading about like some outrageous statistic about how many, the percentage of black women that are sexually abused. And then when you look at the treatment of women, for instance, in music, how women are degraded constantly, called B's and H's and all kinds of disrespectful terms in music and degraded in music and degraded here on YouTube. Those are examples of oppression. Domestic violence, which is a major problem in the black community, is another example of women being singled out and oppressed. So while black women have attained a certain economic status in this society because of the onslaught against the black man, you still have examples of black women being oppressed by black men, whether we're talking about the outright misogyny that we see in music and on social media, or we're talking about domestic violence and sexual abuse. Those are very real problems that too often we try to brush under the carpet. So that's a very real issue. And then you still have the wage gap for what men earn versus what women earn for different positions. So I think that it's a fact that women suffer from, black women in particular suffer from a double oppression in this country. So somebody said one of my mods got it. I mean, you're still on here. Be intellectual. I don't know why they blocked you, but if it was Nikki Justice, I know that she had a justified reason. I mean, I don't know what you said, but your channel now, this one you're communicating with me, is up, so you should be good. Just stay on that one, and you could, add your comments to the chat or whatever. So Kendra Stuckey said, Bette Midler sounds stupid making comments like that. I have to agree. Somebody said, Am I from the Shy? Thanks for your compliment if you're talking about me. No, I'm not from Chicago. I'm from Detroit. Shout out to Melanated Excellence. Shout out to everybody in the chat room. Shell Baby Mac, shout out to you. Shout out to Sean. Yeah, and Kendra Stuckey mentioned that white women have hijacked the Me Too movement. And yeah, that's true because a black woman coined that phrase, Me Too, and she's basically been pushed to the margins. And it's like people have to be reminded that she's the one that actually started that whole slogan and that whole movement. But now what has happened is, rich white women have become the face of that movement. Women who are rich white women who are entertainers and stuff like that, they become the face of that movement. And that's a shame. I mean, that's typical, and that's just another reminder of how even in a situation where people are supposed to be allies and this and that, these people still dominate the conversation and dictate the agenda. And this happens a lot with these, so-called white liberals. They are part of the struggle or whatever, but then somehow they find a way to maneuver and then take over things. And this is something that Malcolm X warned people about a long time ago. Shout out to T. Thanks for your donation. I truly appreciate it. Thank you for supporting my channel. Thank you, Kendra, for supporting what I'm saying. Kendra said, thank you, MP. Speak on it, all facts. Yeah, I mean, I hear you, big game. Like in terms of black men being targeted, that's without a doubt the truth. I mean, black men are targeted in society. You have high incarceration rates, for instance, black men being locked up. You have the violence in the community. You have the police brutality, which is primarily directed at African American men. And so it's a big, a, a real issue that has to be dealt with. And it is a part of the problem, the fact that you have so many men caught up in the criminal justice system. You have so many black men killed at an early age, a young age, and stuff like that. Um, so that is a very real problem. And we know that, like, when somebody wants to conquer a society, the first thing they do is take out the men. And that's what's happened in the black community. So I hear your concerns, and I feel what you're saying, but we can't deny that, to some degree, some black men contribute to the oppression of black women, whether we're talking about sexual abuse or we're talking about domestic violence. Peace to Nikki Justice. Um, Shout out to you. Yeah, so I want to thank y'all for tuning in. I truly appreciate your support. I'm not going to keep this long. But yeah, for people that are tuning in after the upload, tell me what you think. Do you think that women are the N words of the world, or do you think that's a stretch? Do you think it's disrespectful to black people? Yeah, so peace, big game. Peace to all of y'all. I'll catch you on the next video.